But I looked up in Philo, who is a Jewish scholar who lived in Alexandria, Egypt, in the 1st century CE. And in commentary he has called Decalogue 82 to 84, and then in Law 2:2, chapter 2, section 2, he interprets taking the name in vain as making a false oath.
Okay.
So wait a minute, why would it be a false oath? What would that have to do with taking the name in vain? And the answer has to do with the way that they used to make oaths.
Okay.
So there were 2 ways they would make oaths. One of them is they would swear, as Yehovah lives, such and such, right? As Yehovah lives, I saw that chicken cross the road. Or as Yehovah lives, I will go to the market on Tuesday and buy that piece of cloth, right? So, and the idea was that if I don't do that, essentially I'm denying that Yehovah lives, which is blasphemy, right? So that's an oath formula.
Okay.
The other, and by the way, they didn't just do that with Yehovah. The beautiful thing, as we can see in the Tanakh, is this was part of the way people spoke in the ancient world. So, for example, in Genesis chapter 42, verse 15, Joseph is speaking to his brothers, and here's the King James. Hereby ye shall be proved, by the life of Pharaoh you shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. So he's making an oath, not by Yehovah's name, because he's pretending to be an Egyptian. So instead of Che Yehovah, he says Che Pharaoh, as Pharaoh lives.
Okay. And why in particular Pharaoh?
Because Pharaoh was a god.
Really?
Yeah. Absolutely. They believed Pharaoh was a god. Most of the ancient rulers claimed to be gods.
Okay.
Right? They were appointed by gods, but they also had god status themselves. So he's swearing, as Pharaoh lives, as part of the ruse to convince his brothers that he's a good little Egyptian.
Yes.
Right? So an Israelite doesn't swear by Pharaoh. Well, what does a Canaanite swear by? So we see in Jeremiah 12:16. Can you read that verse?
Absolutely. Let me pull that up.
So Jeremiah 12:16, to get the background here, I'm going to start in verse 14, but I'll reread. Actually, I'll have you read it starting in verse 14.
Okay. Is there a specific translation?
It doesn't
with
matter.
King James? Okay. We'll go with King James.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeremiah 12:14.
Yeah.
Thus says the Lord, against all mine evil neighbors that touch the inheritance which I have caused my people Israel to inherit.
So who's he talking about here? He's talking about the Edomites and the Moabites and the Canaanites and the Egyptians, anybody who's a neighbor to Israel who are touching, meaning they're encroaching upon the land of Israel.
Okay. Behold, I will pluck them out of their land and pluck out the house of Judah from among them. And it shall come to pass, after that I have plucked them out, I will return and have compassion on them, and will bring them again, every man to his heritage and every man to his land. So
just as Israel is going to be sent into exile, he's saying the Canaanites are going to be sent to exile. The Moabites are going to be sent to exile. The Edomites are going to be sent to exile. But there's going to be, just as there'll be an ingathering of Israel, there will also be an ingathering of these Gentile nations.
How many people know about that, Nehemia?
I think very few people. I guess people who read Jeremiah know about it. But most people hear about the ingathering of the exiles of Israel, but don't think that much about the ingathering of the exiles of Canaan. And it's interesting, if you look at those countries, they were invaded by foreign lands, right? Who lives now in all of those lands? Arabs live in those lands, and the original inhabitants have been scattered around the world.
Wow.
Yeah. All right,
And
verse 16.
Verse 16. And it shall come to pass, if they will diligently learn the ways of my people, to swear by my name, the Lord liveth.
Which in Hebrew is Chai Yehovah, as Yehovah lives.
As they taught my people to swear by Baal, then they shall be built in the midst of my people.
So boy, this is a type of Zionism that we don't normally hear about. We hear about Zionism as meaning the Jews will return to their ancestral homeland, but there are other people who are going to return to their ancestral homelands in the Middle East.
That's amazing.
I mean, that's coming. That's going to happen, guys. So this is really interesting. So the Canaanites, and they would swear as Baal lives, and they taught Israel to swear by that false title, Baal. Baal is a title, by the way. It's not a name. Do you know what the name of that god was? You probably do, but do you remember what his name was?
Hadad, I believe.
Yeah. So the Canaanites considered the name of their god to be ineffable. It was too holy to pronounce. The Arameans pronounced it, but the Canaanites.
To hear the rest of this conversation, head over to nehemiaswall.com and become a support team member today.